Excited to share with you some stuff that has kind of grabbed my attention. And I talked about this with my athletes just recently, that I wanted to share with everybody some of the news that's in the mainstream media that sometimes gets suppressed because it's about addictions and addiction recovery. And so it doesn't get a lot of the limelight. I'm excited to start doing this more regularly for all of you so that you can be aware of what's out there, what we need to do to help strengthen, your understanding on policy changes, on substance use, on trends, and all kinds of stuff. A little bit of background on me. My name is Coach Blue Robinson. I'm a certified mental health therapist and an addictions counselor. And so I do a lot with people who just want to start overcoming addiction. And I'm excited to share with you a little bit of my 20 years of history being in the field. And on the platform of our athletic recreation program called Addict to Athlete. Addict Athlete's a 501c3 nonprofit program that helps people erase addiction and replace it with things of greater value, like family systems, recovery, all the stuff that kind of instigates a healthy, positive lifestyle. So we don't just teach them how to run fast and do all that cool stuff because, we could switch addictions. We do a lot of service and a lot of outreach. And this is just one more modality for us to give to you to talk a little bit about what's in the news, what's making headlines. I'm kind of excited to do this because it's been quite a goal of mine to be more influential when it comes to giving you information that's going to help if you have a family member that's struggling or if you yourself are having a hard time with addiction. And so there's 3 stories I'm going to share with you guys today. And the first one has to do with the opiate epidemic. Even though we're in the middle of a global pandemic, the opiate epidemic is still very much a big issue. And for the past several years now, you've heard as literature, information, news has broke through big pharma and the things that they've discovered about how addictive, obviously, this stuff is. We start now seeing that there are people that have to pay the piper. And, Purdue Pharmacy has already been one of those entities that has been challenged, has been sued, and has began to settle. But now comes a marketing company called McKinsey. And these guys have done some interesting stuff. This is their marketing company. And I'm going to share with you guys just a little bit of background on McKinsey, the company that it was. Basically, Purdue Pharmacy got a hold of McKinsey Corporation and helped them come up with a strategy on how to get their product out there, like a marketing campaign. Well, McKinsey's Corporation, they decided that they're going to try to wash their hands of it, but not so fast. You also have issues that you need to be accountable to. And they were actually just sued and settled here in the United States for $419 million. And the claim is to resolve the accusations that face them about fueling the opiate epidemic. And the consulting firm that it is did a lot of its investigative work with Purdue Pharma, which we're all pretty much familiar with at this point in the game. McKinsey, they maintained that their past work wasn't really a huge deal and that they just did the best for their client. But really what they were doing was pushing this stuff out hot and furious. I mean, they were doing a great job. Obviously, they made lots of money. And although they don't admit wrongdoing, still, they have agreed to settle, which I think is kind of interesting. But if you get into it, you start talking that the California General Attorney, Xavier Barakat, he was a big part of this and said that it was like a well-oiled machine to get this stuff into, marketing and get it out into the doctors and pharmacies. And he said that although, the potential, for making mass amounts of money was the goal. Where were we on a moral level? And so they calculated among the tactics that they used in this field of getting the marketing out for big pharma, that it contributed to thousands and thousands of deaths. And part of the settlement with the $419 million will go back into addiction recovery and addiction recovery treatment, which is always interesting because then you think, well, is it going to be government sponsored treatment? Is it going to be private? What's it going to be? And so really, I think if you are the average Joe who needs addiction recovery treatment, you probably won't see much of this if that's the case. So it'll be interesting because the settlement actually probes through 47 states and 5 territories, including the District of Columbia. And so money will be distributed, I believe, through all of those. But it doesn't take away the fact that we've lost thousands and thousands of people due to this epidemic, which it could so have, I guess, could really have been thwarted so long ago. And so they did say that they deeply regretted their actions, which, okay, nice for you, but they did affirm that they took a pledge to work with this entity, the Big Pharma, and they did their job. They just did it without a lot of understanding on what the repercussion could be. And so, through McKinsey and the company and corporation that they are, this settlement also brings another level of awareness that the standard of behavior needs to be higher. We need to be much more, I guess, on the ball when it comes to what we're being prescribed and how much and whatnot. So that was an interesting one that I thought was kind of a good, a good one for the team, basically, some accountability, and then hopefully some new ways to look at and market this kind of stuff. Because if you watch, TV, we don't watch much of it, but when we watch TV or we're streaming something on the old Hulu, there's so many medication commercials come up. And so this is how they make their money. They've got to get it out and advertise it. So there's some concerning news coming out through SAMHSA, which is the government's National Institute of Substance Use. And they've found that releasing this information just recently, January 21st of 2021, that methamphetamine overdose is rising in the United States. This is kind of a scary thing because, again, as all of our attention has been pushed over towards, the opiate epidemic, we've kind of forgotten that there's a lot of other substances that are still at play here, and methamphetamine is making kind of a comeback. And so the methamphetamine overdose death surged in an 8-year period. The United States did through SAMHSA did some research. They found out that deaths involving methamphetamine have more than quadrupled, especially in the Hispanic population, the American Indian population, and some of the lower poverty-stricken areas, which is kind of an interesting thing when you look at what they're using it for. And so while so much attention's focused on the opiate epidemic, methamphetamine crisis has so quietly been creeping back in. And so it's another, I guess, offset to say, we have so much at our fingertips for treatment, for medicated assisted therapy. It boils down to, we got to get into the cities, we got to get into these populations that seem to be struggling the most and invest our time and our energy there. It's kind of an interesting situation because it's like, the old Dutch boy, once you're putting, the finger in the dam and you're trying to stop all the leaks, pretty soon you don't have any more limbs and fingers to hold the water back and it's going to burst. So there's a lot of situational issues with this specifically because we saw this ebb and flow in the past. When I first started in the treatment world, helping people overcome addictions as a new drug counselor, methamphetamine was very big in the 2000s. It was very big. And then, of course, it slid down. And right about the time Breaking Bad kind of ended, you started seeing the opiate epidemic start to kick back in. And then throughout we have things like, alcoholism and other things. And so there's so much to this that I do believe we need more education. We need more interventions. We need more, I guess, replacements for these substances, not just, throwing money at it or trying to get people into, I guess, programs and residential treatment centers they can't afford, but really to get in and start doing some ground on the ground, boots on the streets kind of work. And it's going to take a lot of people to make that happen, because as your focus gets turned to one side, another one creeps back in. And so this is a significant issue as we're seeing these higher rates, and it's actually more prone to some poverty than it is like a recreational substance. And so kind of a scary thing, but yeah, just a little bit of information there about two kind of big stories that are kind of out there right now that you will never hear in mainstream media because it's not politically, savvy enough, or it's not sexy enough, and so it doesn't make the news. But there's a lot going on. We'll be reporting soon on smartphone epidemic, where people are starting to find that they're having the same dopamine releases by using smartphones and instant technology. Kind of a good read, but I want to do a little bit deeper dive on that. But just be aware, know that there are things happening, and that with the McKinsey Corporation being sued and now needing to pay $419 million, hopefully that money can go in to help people rebuild their lives. The one thing that kind of stands out with both the McKinsey Corporation and with the Purdue Pharma is that both of them have expressed interest in wanting to be part of the solution, meaning to provide the medications to help people now get off of substance use. I would love to know your thoughts on that. Would you be willing, if you were in charge, to give contracts to these two companies, having started and created and pushed this epidemic? Would you give them the green light to go ahead and now provide the respite? Give them the opportunity to create the medication now to combat it. Seems like a monopoly, if you ask me, but I don't know. I want to know what you guys think. But yeah, for our first little news dose, hope that you guys got a little bit of information there. Feel free to communicate, chat through this. We'll be checking the Facebook posts and our social media outlets. But I'd love to know, what do you think? Do you think big pharma and the McKinsey Corporation should be given the contracts now to make the antidote to help medicate it as a therapy, or do you think we should probably expand and have someone else, throw their hat in who has a little bit more, I guess their hands aren't as dirty, we could say. Nonetheless, hope this finds you guys all well. I'd like to see you next time. Talk to you then.